All right, welcome to the podcast review show where we bring people on and we find out what you're doing right so you can do more of that and find out those things that you might want to think about not doing as much. And joining me as always, I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com. And joining me, you might know him as the podcast talent coach, Mr. Eric K. Johnson. Eric, how are you, buddy?
Hey, Dave, good to see you again. Thanks for and having me back on. I can't wait to get through another podcast.
Yeah, and who do we have with us today?
Today, we have Susan Friedman joining us today. Susan helps authors get noticed, market their books, and get published. Susan, thanks for joining us for the show today.
Oh, I'm so pleased to be here, and I'm excited to hear what you can tell me in terms of how I can improve my podcast.
Well, Susan, the thing you have going for you is we haven't made anybody cry yet, though we've tried plenty of times. It's pretty painless, so you'll be okay, and we'll show you some things you're doing right that we really like about your show, and then we'll show you some areas that you might be able to tweak to help you reach your goals a little bit. First of all, tell us a little bit about the show and the main purpose of your show. What is the goal with your podcast?
So thank you for asking that. So the name of the podcast is Book Marketing Mentors. And I did start it so that I could get sort of more of a place in the market. I was new to the book marketing field and I wanted to get known in that field, and I wanted to be able to do something on a regular basis. And I've been doing it now for 5 years as a weekly show. I think I've missed, maybe I can count on the one hand how many weeks I've missed, but that was for certain circumstances. But overall, it's been going great. It's aimed at primarily nonfiction authors. And the idea is to give them practical tips and techniques that they can use to go out and help them market their book and establish themselves as authorities in their marketplace.
Very good. So 5 years, about 250 episodes or so, going strong. And we'll see what we can do today to help you get a little closer to that goal.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Are these all interviews?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is something I feel very comfortable doing, and that's probably an area that I need to get out of my comfort zone. What I've found that over the years of doing this is that I've been able to relax more and be more me and interact with my guest on a very different level than I did in the beginning, where I felt I was a little, ask a question, get an answer, ask a question, get an answer. Whereas now I really sort of add my commentary to what they say wherever I can.
There we go. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to listen to the first 2 minutes. This is just the opening of your show, kind of how you come out and explain the show and grab us by the throat and get our attention.
If you're an author or plan to be one, get excited because this podcast is for you. Book Marketing Mentors is the only podcast dedicated to helping you successfully market and sell your book. If you're ready for empowering conversations with successful marketing mavens, then grab a coffee or tea and listen in to your host, international best-selling author Susan Friedman.
Welcome to Book Marketing Mentors, the weekly podcast where you learn proven strategies, tools, ideas, and tips from the masters. Every week, I introduce you to a marketing master who will share their expertise to help you market and sell more books. Today, my special guest is Steve Erickson. Steve is on a mission to empower midlife solopreneurs to create a thriving online coaching business by providing knowledge, help, and support with marketing and technology. He's helped people transform the way they approach their business by helping them define a path forward, as well as providing the guidance and support to implement strategies that work for them and their businesses. As someone who's been in the online marketing space for over 20 years, he's heard and seen it all. He uses his knowledge and expertise to help you become a trusted advisor for your clients. I recently had the honor of working alongside Steve and was absolutely blown away with his simple and practical, transformative approach to marketing and technology. And of course, I naturally knew that he's going to make an excellent podcast guest all the way from the southern part of Norway. Steve, what an absolute pleasure it is to welcome you to the show. And thank you for being this week's guest expert and mentor.
So that's the first 2 minutes. So I like the fact, you've got the professional intro and gets me going. And then you came in. My favorite part of the whole thing is when you say, I'm so excited because I was working with Steve recently and blah, blah. To me, that's the introduction. I could care less about his LinkedIn profile. But when you say, here's why I'm excited he's here, because I trust you. That's the part. Eric, what were your thoughts on the intro?
Yeah, I really like the recorded portion of the show open. It tells us exactly who the show is for and what it's all about. It explains to me the benefit that I'm going to get by listening to this podcast. If I'm a nonfiction author and I'm looking to market and sell my book, this is the place for me. And this is the content I'm going to get. One thing I would change a little bit about the open of the show is that, Susan, I'd like to hear a little bit more about you before the interview. What makes you the expert? What is your background? Let's get to know each other a little bit. Let's start creating that relationship before we just dive headfirst into our conversation with Steve. If you're looking to use the podcast to drive the business and to attract more clients and get more people into your programs and your coaching, then let's use that beginning, that opening, to really start to solidify your expertise in the niche. Let's talk about how long you've been helping people, what you do exactly, how you help them do it. It's not enough to be a best writing author. You have to be a best-selling author. In order to do that, you need to market your book properly, and that's what I help you do, and all of that good stuff. So you do a fantastic job, as we'll hear throughout this interview, of making Steve look great. Let's make you look great right up front. You have about between 90 seconds and 5 minutes to really capture the attention of the listener before they decide whether or not they're going to stick through the entire episode. Let's make use of that real estate to describe your superpower and start to build that relationship with your listeners.
So would you forfeit me going through the bio? Because I asked them, I try and limit it to 100 words, but it tends to be a little longer sometimes. And as you say, I'm looking to make my guest look good.
Mm-hmm. So the only reason you're going to go through the bio is to make me care about what Steve has to say. Don't read the entire bio. I don't need 100 words or 200 words. I just need a reason to pay attention to Steve. So, and what you should do is link that bio to authors. So if you're an author and you're stuck with the tech, Steve is a guy that's been on the tech side of building businesses for 30 years, and now he teaches solopreneurs how to sell their goods and services. And as an author, you're looking to sell your book. That's what Steve's going to give us today. Fantastic. I'm in. Like, that's all you need to give me, is a reason to care what he has to say. I don't need his entire biography. I just need a reason to stick around to listen to his tips and tricks for me.
So if I go and look at, obviously I've scripted it out because I suppose after 5 years, I really have memorized it, but I still have my script in front of me.
You bet.
So when you've got the, my intro guy, John,
Yep.
who says what he says, he brings
Yep.
me on. Then I tell people, welcome to the show. Would you still keep that welcome and telling people what the podcast is about?
Yes.
That paragraph that I have?
Yes. So I would
And-
keep that paragraph, and then I would
Mhm.
get into, today we have Steve Erickson on the show. If you're an author and you've really been struggling with the tech on how to sell your book and how to market your book online, Steve's going to give us some great tips and tricks about that today. I'm really excited to get into that. Before I do, let me remind you, I do have a author marketing workshop coming up next Saturday. If you want to be part of that, you can get those details over there. If you do need some one-on-one help, don't forget I offer a strategy call. You can get booked just by heading over to the website, and we can get you signed up at bookmarketingmentors.com. Just click on that link, and you and I can sit down and have a chat for 30 minutes to figure out exactly what you need, and I can help you do that. I can use my 30 years of experience helping authors, or my 20 years of marketing experience to help you get where you need to go. Just a little bit. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn out, 5-minute diatribe of what you do. Just a little bit. Just get people to that website. All over your website. We'll get into your website a little later on in the episode here, but all over your episode or your website is that schedule appointment button. Like that, when people come to your website, that's obvious what you want them to do is schedule an appointment to have a chat with you. Well, let's tell them to go do that here before we get into Steve.
Okay.
So
So everything comes before him.
Yeah, give me a little sentence or two, because only about 50% of your listeners make it all the way to the end of your episode.
Mm-hmm.
They stop listening to your episode when they're done doing whatever it is they're doing. If they're listening to your show while they're driving to work, when they get to work, they stop listening to your episode. If they listen to your episode while they're working out, when they're done working out, they stop listening. Like you're only there to be their companion with whatever they're doing. So make sure you get the really important stuff right up front. So I would give them a sentence. So continue with your paragraph. Give them a sentence of why they want to stick around for Steve. Do a little housekeeping. Give them a reason to go to the website and schedule an appointment. Tell us a little bit about you. If you need some help with your book marketing, that's what I'd love to help you do. Come join the website or come see the website. And then get into that sentence or two of Steve's background. If you're struggling with the tech, Steve has 30 years of tech experience. He helps solopreneurs. Really give me a reason to care about what he has to say and jump into the interview.
Okay. So really cut all that bio stuff and to the absolute minimum of what my guest is an expert in.
Yeah.
Would
Scan his bio, highlight a sentence or two of what really jumps out at you of why I care, and just use that.
Okay.
Because a lot of times that bio, you're trying to convince your audience that here's this person's a big shot smarty pants, and that's why they're here. Your audience kind of trusts you that if they weren't a big shot smarty pants, they wouldn't be on the show in the first place. So they've kind of already been validated because they're in the chair. You wouldn't let somebody who wasn't going to bring value sit in that chair. So all we need to know is like, what is this guy bringing today that I'm going to take notes on and get out of here for? And, I don't need to know that he graduated third in his class at Princeton and dog's name is Sparky. And so many times we get, I think that's one of the things that I cut out most out of all podcasts is the backstory. You don't really need the backstory. It's like, I'm here now. This person's going to help me. And you could even say, hey, if you need help with your book marketing, I've been doing this for 30 years. I could help you with that. And one of the aspects of book marketing, of course, is getting found and harnessing the technology to get the word out there. And today I've got a great guest. Wait till you hear it. I work with this guy side by side. He explains things so easy to understand. Wait till you hear my conversation with Steve. That's another way. If you, and selling doesn't have to be, this Sunday. You could even say, I was working with a client this week and they asked me a question. I thought that would be a good question for the podcast. And right there, people know, oh, well, she does consulting. It doesn't have to be a giant pitch. Because I know some people are like, oh, in fact, you even talk about that in this one about, we all feel a little weird about selling, and you can sell without making a giant pitch. So,
yeah,
but
definitely do it in the front, because there are people that, like Eric said, all right, workout's over. And you always like, yeah, but aren't you going to hit play on the way home? Sometimes, not always.
Okay, that's very helpful, because I was like, where do I put myself in? And I know that when I heard you, Eric, the other day, you were talking about, giving something of yourself, tips, and I'm like, okay, where do I fit that in without this getting too long?
Right.
No such thing as too long, only too boring.
Right.
So
Yeah,
as
and
long as you're
listening.
telling a story that's captivating and keeps the momentum and keeps the story moving forward, then you're going to be just fine.
Okay. Because
But
actually listening to it now, I was actually bored listening to Steve's bio.
Yeah, because it's a lot.
So was
there's
I.
a lot there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So
I
when
was
you,
bored.
but when you started, like I worked side by side with this guy. It's like, ooh, okay, this is the real stuff. Now we're off the LinkedIn page. And
Yeah.
that's when my ears perked up, because now you're going to
Yeah.
tell me why he's here.
If
Yeah.
you say I work side by side with him and he helped me do X, Y, and Z, and that's why I brought him on today, to show you how you can use it in your book marketing, then
Mhm.
I'm all in. Like, perfect, let's do this.
Okay. That
So
makes sense.
I thought you asked a really, like, I love the fact that you just jumped into what are some of the biggest struggles, because later Steve actually says one of the things you need to know is what are your biggest struggles. And I was like, well, check, done that, and it seemed to move along at a decent clip. The only thing I could find, and is you did it, and I'm looking here and I'm like, did I not? I'm going to play this clip. This might not be the clip I'm thinking of, because you had a really good example. You had him tell a story, and that actually, it was more of an example of when you're trying to get in front and identify your target audience. He brought up the example of women who are not married. And he said there's a big difference between women who are not married because they're a widow and women who are not married because they're divorced. And I was like, ooh, that's a really good point. So I love the fact that, and I think that's what this clip is. He also talked about technology and emotions, and I believe that's what this is.
If you have your marketing sorted, but not your technology, you're not going to get very far, because we really live in an online world. If you have your technology sorted, but not your marketing, you're not going to get very far either, because effectively you're just automating something that is not working very well.
And that was the main point, and it was a really good point. But there's about 4 minutes in the middle of that where that point gets repeated over and over and over. And in the middle, the one thing I noticed, and I don't think this is not your fault, there's a lot, like, we learned through this interview that this guy, we learned this, and I this is in the middle of that. So he just said that if you don't have the emotion and the technology, yada yada yada, but in the middle of that answer, he does this.
What I do, what my expertise is, that I actually have so much information and knowledge and able to teach around marketing and about technology. I've literally been using computers since 1977. I was 10 years old when I started using computers.
Don't care.
My last role with a company for the last 6 years, I ended up as the Chief Technology Officer, being responsible for web platforms and for launches and CRM, the customer relationship management systems, for 350,000 contacts, for launches that were taking in mid to high six figures, for a company that was doing over 25 million in revenue a year, 8 figures. At the same time, I have studied marketing for over 20 years and been executing on marketing for over 20 years. So I really got a strong base in both. And
so when I heard that, I was kind of like, didn't we already introduce this guy? Like, didn't we do a pretty long introduction at the beginning? And so he threw that in the middle of this part of, if you don't have the emotional part and the targeting part. And so what I did is, this is what I would have done.
If you have your technology sorted, but not your marketing, you're not going to get very far either, because effectively you're just automating something that is not working very well. What I see is that nobody really is filling both in this space.
And that's really that whole like 4-minute section in about 18 seconds. He made his point and made the follow-up. And for me, that thing in the middle, I was kind of like, okay. And even and I thought that was funny, because he does say at one point,
for instance, in my terms, that would be me going out and saying, hey, I do technology
Oh,
services.
I know what this clip
and
is. This is a clip I made of him promoting himself, and you in the middle actually then explain how great he is. And it just, I don't know if it was just me, but once I noticed it, I could not notice it.
For instance, in my terms, that would be me going out and saying, hey, I do technology services and I do marketing, and I can help you with this and I can help you with that, and I can build your landing page and I can build your website. That's all me. It's all I, and it's nothing about you.
Which is what he's
The
doing now.
technology is something that you teach as well.
For instance, in terms again of what I do, is I help people who are really struggling with their technology. You know, when they are sitting in front of the computer for 3 days and they're trying to get
this, and you put different courses together on this subject.
So it just seemed like every question had something explaining what this guy did. And I just, I was like, I can't wait to hear Eric's take on this, because I'm like, I think this is just a Dave thing. I don't know. Eric, what are your thoughts on, did you notice that at all, or was it just me?
I noticed that the interview got very technical. There was a ton of useful information in it, but it was all real technical information. I would have loved to have heard Steve tell some stories and engage the audience, give some examples, rather than a laundry list of the things that he does. Like, let's pick one. What I would have liked to have seen you do in your questions is adjust the questions a little bit to come from an author's perspective, and then get him to tell a story. So, Steve, I love that. As an author who's trying to market their book, how can I put that into use to get more people to buy my book, or to get more notice, or to get to become a bigger brand in the market? You know, and come with your questions from an author's point of view, and then ask him questions to tell you a story. So tell me about a time when you helped a client put that to use to build their brand. Tell me about a time when one of your clients really struggled with that. And then all of a sudden he starts telling stories, which brings the technical information to life. And it's a lot easier to follow because there's a beginning, middle, and end. And it's not just a laundry list of technical information.
Yeah,
Okay.
at the beginning,
that's helpful.
I thought it was interesting that when you were talking with Steve, like, I think the part of you and Steve, I don't think you guys ever said the word authors. There were always solopreneurs and other things like that. And I was like, at the beginning, I was like, if I didn't know better, this was just an internet marketing kind of podcast. This wasn't a podcast about authors. It was just now granted, Steve's an internet marketer, so you're in his wheelhouse, but I just thought it was interesting that kind of like what Eric was saying, if you could tie the technology back to how does, Joe author use this tool?
Now, one thing about interviews, I love when people start with they hit the ground running. Yeah. Every time we listen to episodes with podcasters who do an interview, they always start off with, tell us a little bit about yourself. And, it's really vague, and we wander into the interview. And I really encourage podcasters to hit the ground running. However, listening to your interview with Steve, we almost started 2 steps too far into the interview. Your first question was, tell us about struggles. How do people struggle with it? And I'm like, well, what are we talking about yet? We didn't develop the why first. We didn't make the listener care about the topic before we jumped into the struggles. And you could have started with something like, Steve, I know you help solopreneurs, but in reality, authors are solopreneurs. And in what way are authors and solopreneurs one and the same? And then he could say, well, solopreneurs, authors, it's all up to them to build their brand and get out and market their book. A lot of people think once you publish a book, you're done. And your publishing house is going to do all the marketing for you. And in fact, you need to go do it yourself. And that's really what a solopreneur does. And he could make the connection between authors and solopreneurs there at the front. And then we can get into the struggles. But we need to make that why connection at the beginning between authors, and regardless of who you have on the show, whether it's a public speaking coach or a technology coach or a podcast coach or whoever it is that you're interviewing on your show, make that connection between an author and whatever expertise your guest has. Let's make our authors really care about the why first, and then let's get into how do we use your information to make my book marketing better.
And it's interesting because I usually do something like that. So I know you've taken this one episode, but many of the others, I actually start with whatever their expertise is,
Perfect.
explain what it's about. Like I did one the other day, we're talking about cause publishing. Well, what the heck is cause publishing?
Yeah.
You know, so I get them to explain that before we go into anything, but it just happened this particular one I just went right in, which,
And the reason that probably is because you and Steve have that working relationship.
exactly.
You almost know too much about Steve.
Yeah.
So you forget what the audience doesn't know, and you just pick up where you left off last time.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to do. And when you're starting an interview, that little pre-interview chat that you have before you hit record is so critical. When you tell people, if I were interviewing Steve, I'd say, Steve, look, you and I, we've known each other for years. I know a lot about you, but my listeners do not. We're talking to authors here. We're helping them build their brand and sell more of their books. So I'm going to ask you questions that I already know the answer to, but they don't. They're just going to be softballs that you can just knock out of the park. So when I ask you about things I already know, just follow along and pretend I don't know.
Yeah, and funnily enough, when I do the pre-interview with the guest, we spend a few minutes beforehand because there are a few things that I want them to know. And one of them is that I usually say, I may act very dumb here, but I don't want anybody to assume that, for us to assume that they understand. So
Yeah.
I sort of want you to dumb it down. So
Perfect.
if I ask that, but again, you're quite right, because I'd had a conversation with Steve quite recently. And so he and I just jumped in. But I don't know if you remember the interview I had with you. I think we started with, tell us about podcasting and what it is and why it's important for an author. So I think I was much more, focused on the topic when you and I spoke. And again, yeah.
The interview overall, I thought, was very conversational. You have a solid interview style. I think you jump in and interview him or interrupt him where you need to for more clarification like that. When he starts going down a rabbit hole, just jump in and go, you know what, hold on one second. Let me ask you about that. Like, what does that actually mean? Or give me the definition of that. Or how do I put that to use? Or let's dive in a little deeper there. That's a great trick to use when your guest starts going off on a tangent and giving you a 26-minute answer. Like sometimes you just need to jump in and derail him and refocus him on the question at hand. So
yeah,
I didn't hear a lot of that in this episode, but that's great.
Yeah.
I know one of the things that for me, a sign of a good podcast is if I take a note or if it's making me do something of action. So when he was talking about, tying emotion with technology, and he starts talking about the wheel of emotion or the emotion wheel, and if you just Google it, and then he explained it, and I was, that kind of triggered a cool theater of the mind because he was kind of explaining it like a bullseye and blah, blah, blah. And that was one that I was like, okay, when this is done, I've never heard of the wheel of emotion. And I'm like, I think it's on Thursdays right after Jeopardy or something like that. But, and I just was like, and the only thing, again, I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I was like, now what do I do with that? I understand I'm going to tie it with my technology. And I was just like, if we could have tied it into books maybe. So when and that's when I was really glad when I came back and I saw, oh, this is nonfiction. So this is not, we're not really worried too much about pulling on people's heartstrings in a nonfiction book, and in most cases, at least. The only thing I found, and I don't know if this is a bad thing or a good thing, is you do a lot of what I would call, it's almost like an echo. Somebody will say something and you will repeat it. And so I've got a couple clips here. I'll just play this first one.
It really is. And you're absolutely right. I've heard that so many times, that you buy from emotion and then you justify it with the logic afterwards. Well, I needed it. I needed to have it. But somehow that wasn't quite the reason that you bought it in the first place. Talk to us more about these emotions, because I know you spend a lot of time with this and you put different courses together on this subject.
So I love that you listened to what he said. He was talking about technology and emotions, but you actually said, I hear this all the time, which kind of says everybody kind of knows this, that you need technology and emotion to work together and yada, yada, which he just said. He just said you need that. And you basically just echoed what he said and then led into the question. And here's you do, and again, this is where I go, I don't know if this is bad or good.
So there's one gem that I guess share, and then they can do something, and that's something practical. So the fact that you demand that of your speakers, I really like that.
Because he just said that's what I do for my speakers, and I'm like, yep, I just heard him say it too.
I love that approach. We should all go for that.
So there, and I was like, I don't know if this is bad or not, but there were, especially the first one where you said, I hear this all the time. You repeated what he said, and then you led into a question. And I was like, because I do that. I just cut him out because I don't need to reinforce the statement he just said, because he did it in a clear way. I got it. If you said, oh, so it's kind of like such and such, and you re-clarify, but you were kind of just echoing what he said. And I was like, I'm not sure that's, and what I would do, because I like the fact that you're kind of chiming in on that, is either sometimes, and again, this is where you get worried. If you wait to the end, I sometimes call this the Jerry Springer, where you go, you know what? I really like that conversation with Steve, and there were 3 things that jumped out at me. And then you kind of give your spiel on it, maybe share a story with one of your clients. The only thing I always worry about that is if it's at the end of the podcast, like Jerry did, nobody's going to hear it. So that's why I was like, you know what? I'm going to throw this one out to Eric and see what your thoughts were.
I'm kind of in the middle there. I like the way that you acknowledge what he said and affirm that you were listening. When it gets long like that, it kills the momentum of the conversation. So what I would like to see is acknowledge it with, I like that concept of X, and then move right into your next question. So how does that tie into Y? And then we're moving on again. So we keep moving forward. So you're acknowledging him, but you're not restating everything that he just said. So continue to acknowledge, just edit it and make it a little shorter and a little more brief. And I know a lot of people don't like to spend a lot of time editing their show. You can always go back and edit if you're trying to find your spot. If you're just treading water until you find the next question, just pause, find the next question, pick up again, and go edit that pause out. If you're silent for 5 or 10 seconds, it makes that edit really easy to find. Just what I do at the beginning of my episodes is I let people know that. I say, here's the deal. If I stop and I need to edit something out, we'll just be silent for 5 or 10 seconds. That way it'll make it easy for me to find. Don't get panicked. Don't feel like you need to fill the gap. If you're done talking, then that's fine. Just stop and we'll pick it up again. I'll go and edit that out. So I like the way that you acknowledge him. I would just trim it down, make it a little shorter, and maintain the momentum of the conversation. Keep it moving forward.
Yeah, Eric has a great point there. I let my guests know that as well. I will say, hey, if for some reason you get done with a question and I don't ask you a question right away, just realize I'm coming up with the next question. So there's no reason, because what happens then is they do an echo. They'll say, well, I have found that if you put yellow and blue together, it makes green. And they'll pause and they don't hear me do anything. And they go, because green is when you put yellow and blue. And I'm like, okay, I don't need that. They start to over answer. And so by letting them know, hey, there might be weird, awkward silences along the way. That's normal. I'll take them out later. And I'm just coming up with another question.
When your guest jumps in with, well, like I said, or, as I've said before, then you know they're starting the circle again, and they're just starting to repeat themselves. That's when you want to jump in and interrupt with another question.
So all in all, like I said, I thought the interview was, like I said, I had things written down. So that to me, I was like, I got to go check out this emotional wheel thing on Wikipedia. And it's one of those things, because I'm your target audience. I have a nonfiction book sitting behind me. And I was like, that does make sense. So I thought there was great content in it. And here was how you wrapped up your show.
So, Steve, thank you so much for being our guest expert and mentor. And thank you all for taking time out of your precious day to listen to this interview. And I sincerely hope that it sparked some ideas you can use to sell more books. Here's wishing you much book marketing success.
The time is now to take action and finally build your book-selling empire. And the great news is that Susan is here to help you. Visit bookmarketingmentors.com and sign up for a free 15-minute book marketing strategy session with Susan. She'll help you discover your first steps to marketing and selling your book. Only those who take action are rewarded, so visit bookmarketingmentors.com, and we'll see you again next week.
And now we dance.
One of Dave's biggest pet peeves is music for the sake of music.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.
So I realized why we were having music for the sake of nothing was we were waiting for it to end so we could put in the C-suite thing. I would fade that out and then just have the C-suite guy come in, because that's a pet peeve. When people...
Well, I actually don't have any. They pop those in, and I actually hate it. And one of my questions for you is the platform, because I love the platform. It's very expensive. Megaphone.
Yes, it is.
And I don't like the fact that they stick these ads in, and I'm not benefiting from those ads at all. And that's that.
And the benefit is, so far we've got it's expensive.
Yeah.
And they put their ad in there.
And they put the ad in there. I like the look of it, and I like how easy it is. I actually went from Lipsing, which I know, Dave, you worked there.
That's all
right. I just really like this platform, but I just don't like,
because don't they make you sign a contract as well?
I'm actually I think I'm on a month to month now. I think I was annual, but I've been with them for, a few years now. So,
okay.
And I know Jeff Hazlett, who owns the company, and he's very involved with the National Speakers Association, as I am. And so there's a lot of
those, it gets complicated kind of thing.
Exactly.
Right. Some side benefits to it. Definitely.
Yeah.
The close of the show there, I love the single focused call to action.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't fill it up with visit my website and follow me on Facebook and don't forget to subscribe and rate and review and all that nonsense. It was a single focused call to action at the end, directing people to your strategy session. That part I liked. The part I didn't like was it was the voice guy doing it and not you. Because as a listener, as soon as I hear voice guy come on, I'm like, okay, episode over. I can hit it, skip it, go. Assuming I actually was one of the people who actually made it to the end of your episode. Now I hit the voice guy coming on, the closing credits, and I'm out. Like, I'm not sitting through the movie at the end watching who the best boy and the gaffer were, because I don't care. I'm getting to the parking lot, right? So your credits are rolling. I'm out. I'm not listening to anything that guy's saying. So we talked earlier about moving that call to action to the beginning of your episode, and I gave you the benefits of doing that. But there's also a benefit of you selling it rather than him, because I believe you, I trust you. You and I are the one that are creating that relationship here on the show. And if you want to use the show to attract clients, and you need to add more of you and your expertise to the show, and then you need to invite me to come have a conversation with you. That's going to be much more powerful in getting people to go click that button than having your voice guy do it in the closing credits.
So, okay. So based on what you're saying now, I would, because I've got that scripted piece that I thank people for listening. And
Oh, can we stop there? Thank you for listening. Not thank you. One person.
Yeah, one person.
I know you
Okay.
got it, but it's weird, but it becomes a much more intimate when I say, hey, I want to thank everyone for listening versus I want to thank you for listening.
Oh, so I say thank you. Oh, I thank you all for taking time out of you. So it's thank you, just thank you for taking time out of your precious day
Yeah.
to listen to this interview. And I sincerely hope that it sparked some ideas you can use to sell more books. Here's wishing you much. And I've added, instead of just book, I've said book and author marketing success, because I want to get them into them thinking author marketing, not just book marketing. So I've added that.
So
But-
what you could do there is, I want to thank you for taking time out of your precious day to listen to the show. If you'd like to have a conversation on how you might put this into use for your book marketing, go to the website and click that book a strategy session, and you can have a complimentary 15-minute talk with me.
Okay, that's beautiful. I'm
Yeah.
pleased you're recording this because I got to capture that.
Well, it was funny because as I was listening to it the first time, and you said, I forget how the last part of your paragraph, there's something about continued book marketing success or something like that. And I was like, oh man, there's almost no call to action. And then Deep Voice Guy came in and saved the day. And I'm with Eric. I was like, that is cool. That's like, go do this now. Start to, so I'm with Eric. I would just take what he said and have it come out of your mouth.
So then that would be the outro, and I wouldn't have any music or anything.
You could have
I'd
the
just
music.
finish.
It would just be,
You could leave the big voice guy and the credits. You can let it roll and let him repeat the call to action. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have the problem with him doing it. What my issue is we can't assume people are going to sit through that and take action with his with it's like if Dave said, you know what, I really think you ought to call Eric and talk to him. And you're like, I don't know. I don't know him from Adam. But if I said, Susan, I really think you and I ought to get on the phone and talk. You're like, oh, okay. Then maybe I should do it.
Okay.
Because I'm inviting you to have a conversation with me rather than Dave telling you to go have a conversation with me. It's
Makes
just
sense.
more power. So I don't have a problem with leaving all of that good stuff, what he says, because he gets much more in depth with it. What I would like you to do is just make it real quick. If you'd like to have a conversation with me, if you'd like to have a free strategy session with me to discuss how you can put all of the great information Steve gave us to use with your book marketing, just go to bookmarketingmentors.com and click that book strategy session. That's really all you need.
Okay.
And then you can let voice guy go and he can do the whole thing. And I would just, in your post-production, just trim off some of that 12 seconds of music after him, because that really serves no purpose other than to delay the promotion guy coming back in and talking about the network.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing before we get into your website, just content, I would definitely say consider doing solo shows. And I know it's weird to talk to the wall, but just think about that one person who's sitting across, the desk from you, and they're saying, I don't understand this ISBN thing, and all the print up demand, whatever the topic is, and then just talk to that one person. And what that does is when you do interviews, it grows your network, which is great. You want that. When you do a solo show, you increase your influence, because I still pop in and out of the Ray Edwards show. And the early shows of Ray Edwards was Ray talking to me. Same thing with Michael Hyatt. He was talking. It was like this sage old wise man giving me this great advice.
Are you saying Ray's old?
No, not at all. He's but then and there's Michael. And then both of them brought on a co-host, and Ray brought on his son, and they were both having a competition to see who could crack each other up. And I was no longer having a conversation with this wise man. I was a fly on the wall, and it just wasn't the same. So when you do a solo show and you just talk to the person, it does create this interesting connection. So
And how often should I do a solo show, and for how long? Because an hour, 30 minutes is a long time to do a solo.
yeah.
Well, It depends how what you have to teach. I was working with a client the other day who does an interview show, and I suggested the same thing to them. And what we came up with was 3 episodes a month would be interview, and then the last episode of the month was a solo show, kind of recapping the 3 interviews and teaching on it and how it all comes together. And if you do a little planning, if you get out your promotional calendar and you look at May and you go, okay, May, I'm going to talk with a podcast talent coach. I'm going to talk with a social media marketer, and I'm going to talk with a blog expert. And then the last episode of that month, you can talk about how to use other platforms, online platforms, to market your business. And you can tie in blogs and podcasts and social media into that last episode that you teach. So you might create themes in a month, or you might just teach something completely different and make reference to those earlier episodes, or you might just teach something altogether that maybe you don't have an expert for. Maybe there is something on the ISBN numbers or something like that, or finding a publisher that is just in your wheelhouse and there really is no expert for it other than what you do. And so that might be something you teach on. I know 30 minutes sounds like a long time, but once you do your outline and you do your introduction for 5 minutes and then you teach and then you wrap it up, it's really, if you transcribe it, it's really only about 4 pages worth of content. I mean, it's not really that long.
So would you still do the same intro, everything the same, same outro, and then it's just me, as you say, giving my commentary or ranting or whatever I'm doing?
And this is where you could say something, a lot of times I will make episodes based off of an email that I get. And I'm like, oh, that's a really good question. And I would just say, hey, I was, got an email today from Fred, and Fred wants to know what's the difference between Libsyn and Blueberry. Well, let's talk about that. And I thought that'd be a great episode. By the way, if you have a question, feel free to email me, dave@schoolofpodcasting.com. But let's get back to Fred's question. And now
Dave's show, the School of Podcasting, is like a variety show. Dave's got a little bit of industry news. He's got a little bit of, because of my podcast, he's got a little bit of technical help. He's got a little bit of gear review. Like, it's a hodgepodge of great information for podcasters. But then the last episode of the month is the question of the month.
Yeah.
And it's just answers to that question from various listeners. And it's a crowdsourced sort of episode, different than the rest of the episodes from the month. So every episode doesn't have to be the exact same format. I would just be consistent. So if it's the first episode of every month or the last episode of every month, I would make that your teaching. You may be the keynote speaker of the month and set up what the month is all about, and then go into the 3 interviews to support what you just taught at the beginning of the month. Or you could teach something, maybe you teach something completely different than what the marketing expertise gives you for the rest of the month. But I would be consistent on where that is. And if every episode is a 30-minute interview and you just want to teach for 10 minutes, then teach for 10 minutes. Yeah. Again, like we talked about earlier, no such thing as too long, only too boring. Don't try and make it 30 minutes if you don't have 30 minutes to teach. Like, if you're teaching one thing, just remember, people are going to walk away from your episode and they're going to remember the one big thing today. What is the one big thing you want them to remember? Then teach around that. And if that takes you 12 minutes, then it's 12-minute episode. If it takes you 45, then make it 45.
And then I know we're going to talk about the actual website, but when I actually promote this one, do I do it the same way? Find a headline for it and talk about the things so it sort of it's got the same look and feel to it as everything else?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Okay. So I'm not necessarily pointing out that it's, me.
No, if you've never done one, like maybe on the first one, you go, hey, just for the record, today it's just me and you. And I wanted to talk to you about this. And here's why I think it's important. and then off you
Yeah,
go.
and you might call them something special. You know, it might be a deep dive or something like that. You know, where you always have a headshot of your expert on the post on your
Yeah.
website.
Mhm.
Maybe that's your photo, or maybe it's maybe it's a deep dive class, or it's a master level class, or it's a master class or something like that, where you're teaching on, maybe it's master class ISBN numbers, or master class book formatting, or master class creating your talk out of your book, or something like that. So you teach a master class on a particular day each month.
Okay. Okay. I have got so many podcasts that are backlogged,
Mhm.
and it's almost embarrassing because I've got interviews that I did like September of last year, and there are not enough weeks in the in the year to get through them all. I'm just wondering what to do, and I keep interviewing more people because I've got exciting people that I want to interview. So what do I do?
Do you have you might consider bonus episodes. Maybe the master class
I
becomes a
did.
bonus episode
I
where
started
your
that, yeah.
teaching doesn't fall in line. Maybe you release the podcast every Monday, but your bonus episode comes out on Thursday, where it's a master class of you teaching something in particular.
Are there, talking about days of the week, are there any special? I mean, mine comes out at every Wednesday at 3:00.
People
That's
don't
what
really
it's set for.
care when your podcast comes out. They listen on their schedule.
Yeah.
So some fans may listen every Wednesday. Some fans may listen every Saturday. The key is that your podcast is there when they go to listen to it. Like I listen to my favorite show every Saturday because I'm working around the house, and that's what I do. I listen to that show. That
Yeah.
show, I think, comes out Friday mornings. Like it doesn't, to me, it doesn't care. I don't care. Like Dave's show comes out every Monday. I never listen to it on Monday. I listen to it
Okay.
on Wednesdays when I'm driving, because that's just when I listen to it.
Yeah. The only time, or the only scenario I can think of where it would matter is if you're doing, let's say I'm doing the local Akron, Ohio podcast and we don't have COVID. I might want to put that out on Wednesday and say, hey, don't forget, down at the Civic, it's the play such and such, and this weekend at the box office, the new Tom Cruise movie, something that's timely,
Relevant, timely.
that
Yeah.
you'd want to give them time to plan or whatever. But for the most part, I laugh. I just listened to an episode yesterday that was from December.
Well, and one of the things that I try and keep is to make the episodes fairly evergreen. So whenever people, listen to it, they really wouldn't know if I recorded it yesterday or 3 months ago. So
yeah, as long as you're consistent. And if you have a backlog of interviews that you need to release, then move to a twice a week schedule. Just say, hey, here over the first few months of the year, we're going to catch up. I have so many great people to talk to. I'm going to release episodes. I'm going to release bonus episodes every Thursday in addition to my Monday episode, just to bring you the great content that I have. But I would call those bonus episodes. So then once you catch up, you're going back to 1 day a week, and people don't say, hey, what happened to the other episode? But yeah, I would just release that second episode when you have a chance. Always keep a few in the can though.
Yeah,
because life will happen.
I know. I've had that happen. I've had to regenerate some with a different title, but it's the same interview. Yes.
Yeah. I've lost my voice, and then all of a sudden, 2 weeks worth of podcasts.
Yeah.
I always have one in the can, break glass in case of emergency.
Well,
Always have that
exactly.
one ready
And
to go.
interestingly enough, when I started, they always said, have at least 5 or 6 in the can. And I've needed that. But
Right.
now,
Because everybody always goes, "Psh, what do I need that for?" Until life happens and they're going, oh, shoot, I wish I had that one.
yeah. No, I'm totally with you there. I would definitely have several in the can, just in case of that break glass. But I'm just embarrassed that I've interviewed people and I haven't put it out that. So
it happens with everybody.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I've been interviewed and I totally forgot about the interview. And then they said, oh, your interview's live. I was like, I don't even remember when I did that. That was months ago. Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast in December and he's like, yeah, I don't even know if the kids are going to go back to school this year. School's starting here in like 2 weeks. And I'm like, it's December. Like, because the interview happened clear back in August.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good.
Let's take a look at your website and kind of give you a little feedback from there. Is the website itself completely controlled by the Megaphone people, or
No.
do you?
Nope, it's me.
Okay, so the website is you. Great. It's at bookmarketingmentors.com.
Correct. And it's a WordPress site, and it's just a special Appendipity put out.
Yes. And there's something you need to know about them.
Yes.
They went out of business about 2 years ago.
Okay. Well, thank goodness I haven't had to ask them for anything.
Yeah.
Because,
What that means is as WordPress continues to update and update and update, which they do on a monthly basis,
yeah.
eventually your website's going to break.
Okay, great.
It's just
Thanks
a
for
matter. It's just a matter of time. So I always recommend, because I use them, because I see where you're using the Marin theme. As soon as I saw the buttons at the top, I'm like, oh no, I think she's using the Marin theme, and sure enough, you are.
They were great.
They were awesome.
There's no updates now, and so even if your website doesn't break, there's holes in the back where people can hack because it doesn't get updated.
Yes. So my recommendation is, if you want a podcast theme on WordPress, there's a company called Second Line Themes, but mark off a weekend to it's not going to be a huge, but some of the things like having the little host at the top of the page, that's kind of built into this theme. And I think you can set that up, but it's not, but what's automatic is having an automatic player. They have some really cool ways to add subscribe buttons, which leads me to my second point is you have iTunes and Google Play Music. Google Play Music went out of business about 6 months ago. They were replaced with Google Podcasts. So what you would want to do is have at least Apple, Google, and Spotify. Those are the top three. And it's a really good chance that you're in Google Podcasts. If you go to podcast.google.com and search for your show, that'll be there. You can leave.
Hey, Dave, let me ask you about the theme before we jump into that. Is it easy to change a theme to go from Appendipity to something else? Is that something she can do on her own, or should she have a web guy do that?
You might have a web guy on standby. What it is a WordPress theme is like your clothes. So I could like right now I have a green sweatshirt on with a stain. I noticed I have a stain on the shirt. That's nice. So if I go, hey, it's time for a new theme. This one has a stain on it. I could go and take off my shirt, grab a new pair of jeans, put them on. Same skeleton, same data. It's still Dave Jackson, just a new theme. Now I've got, a 3-piece suit on with no stain, etc. So the data is not going to change. It's just it's how it looks. And it's usually just a matter of like, oh, that's kind of different. Then you click a couple buttons. You're like, oh, that changed the way it looks this way. Now we're looking at Dave from the front, or this put a hat on him or something like that. And so you just kind of play with it. Depending on who your web host is, some web hosts will allow you to make kind of a behind the scenes version of your website. And the technical name for this is escaping me right now, but you can kind of go in and you say, hey, make a duplicate of this. And what's cool is it's behind the scenes, and there it's a twin. It's the exact copy of your website. And you can go in, load the new theme, tweak it. And then when you're done, say, hey, take this from Backstage and overwrite what's in the public. And so you kind of get to do a test drive on it. And I
am going to need some help with that. Yep. I know.
I cannot figure out the name of that, but it's websites.
It's like a child theme. Is that a child theme?
Nope. A child theme is all in the public. This is, the word is escaping me.
Okay.
But there's
everybody's now yelling at their
website. Yes.
Their speakers going, Dave, it's this.
Yeah. But that's another thing I've done where I recently changed my theme, and it was like, all right, I don't want to do this in front of the public. And that's the other thing.
I've said that many times, but it had nothing to do with my theme.
So, but yeah, it's not hard to do. It's you just basically go into your website, go to themes, and it says, hey, you're using Epidipity. And you go, yep, I want to do this. In fact, there's even a preview button there. You can kind of preview it to see if it's just going to completely whack your website. And usually it's, 15, 20 minutes of, oh, let me do this. And that goes here and drag this widget here. And it's not that bad. And if all else fails, most web hosts have a backup of yesterday. So if you completely whack things out, you just call them and go, can you give me a copy of yesterday and bring it over? So it sounds very scary. It's really not.
It is.
Yeah.
You've already freaked me out.
I'm sorry.
And you can easily find somebody on Upwork or Fiverr that can help you do it as well. If you don't have a web person, just find somebody that has a lot of reviews and has done a lot of work before you let them jump in and tinker with it. And Steve can probably.
I was just going to say that you may have some people. So let's talk about this because I spend a lot of time on this. First of all, I do have somebody on Fiverr who edits it, but basically what she's doing is she is putting the intro and outro on it.
Yep.
And I was going through and editing and stuff I didn't like, and myself, if I didn't like what I was saying, I was editing. It was taking me hours, and I was like, this is not a cost-effective use of my time. So now I've just said to my lady, if I stumble on something, take care of it. And she's able to do that. She's really very good, and I've had her for pretty much I think the whole time I've used my had my podcast. So and she's very reasonable. But can you go back to the site, please? Thank you. So one of the things I pay attention to is the headline.
Yeah, and beauty on that.
Because love the benefit that you deliver in the headlines.
Yeah, your headlines are great, and so many people just don't put any time in it. And I understand why, because you're done. You're like, ugh, I just want to go to bed. It's 2 a.m. But how to create a powerful certification program with your book, how to learn from failure to optimize success. It's all, here's how you're going to benefit, how to best use JV partners for your promotion. So I loved all this. I did notice while we're on the front page. Let me
make one comment about headlines. The whole purpose of the title of your episode is to get people to push play.
Yeah.
The purpose of the name of your podcast is to tell people they're interested. So the name of your podcast says, hey, this show is for you. When they come and they look at your headlines, your episode titles, they go, that one looks interesting. I push play. That's the whole purpose of the title of the episode, is to deliver that benefit and get them to push play. And I think your titles do just that.
Yeah. If you think about radio or TV, when you turn those on, something starts. When you start a podcast app, nothing happens. And the thing that's going to make you click is you start scrolling down. Let's see who's got a new episode today. Ooh, that looks like it's good. So it's that title that gets you to click. It's for me, I know it looks pretty and all. I'm not a huge fan of putting the episode number at the beginning. I like them at the end because it's just, that is prime real estate. But I see you have 257 episodes. So if you don't want to change 257, and I don't know. Go ahead.
The reason that is because sometimes that episode title gets truncated when you're looking at it on a phone in one of the players. So if I pull it up in Apple Podcasts or in Stitcher or Spotify or Google Podcasts, sometimes I'll get BM257 : how to market in a way people. And that's it, because it's truncated. So if they're going to chop off half of or part of your title, I would rather they chop off the BM257 than chop off want to buy from you.
Okay, so you would put it, so if I change this now and just put how to market you in a way people would want to buy from you, and would I put like in parentheses -, or dash BM257?
That's what I do. So on my episodes, I put how to market in a way people want to buy from you -PTC 257.
Okay, I can do that. That's easy. Yeah.
Because that way, because people have a good point. They're like, oh, it makes it easy to search for a show. So if you
Yeah.
reference something, hey, back in April, we talked about this on episode 147, it makes it easy to go to the website and search.
Yeah.
So I get it. To me, I go, boy, that's really prime real estate that you're giving away. And nobody is Googling episode 164.
No, I understand that.
So,
yeah. And on Megaphone, interestingly enough, I have that title, and then
Right.
they want a clean title. So then it's just to how to market your way.
That's for our good friends at Apple. And there's probably a field for an episode number that Apple also wants, because in theory, eventually you're going to be able to ask the woman in your phone, hey, play the Book Marketing Mentors podcast episode, blah, blah, blah. But if that episode number isn't in there, then Siri's not going to be able to do that. That's why they're doing that. And Apple is just, don't get me going on Apple. Their technology is as big as they are. Their technology is at times wacky, to say the least. But I would definitely on the subscribe buttons have iTunes, Google, and Spotify. Those are the three. And I'm assuming Amazon is going to eventually come in at 4. We'll see. I think you're going to see Android participation go up in 2021. I can't say why.
I do like the big subscribe buttons though.
Yeah.
Like they're above the fold. As soon as I get on the web page, I see subscribe right there. I love the fact that they're big. Let's just update them a little bit to the proper platforms. But I love the fact that they jump out and they grab you. Like getting people to subscribe now is key, and it's right there in front of you.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to point out is that when I got done listening and I was like, well, who is Susan? So I came over to the About page, and the About page starts explaining to me about the podcast, but not about you.
Okay.
So I was like, huh. So then I went over here to your publishing company.
Yeah.
And I was like, again, who is Susan? So I clicked on About, and I got about the publishing company, and kind of, this is a little bit of your history, but I would think somewhere on your website, also this opened in the same window. I don't know if you noticed that. I'm now on, like, there's no way to get back to the podcast page except hitting back.
And I will change that, because on the actual episodes, everything that is a clickable link opens to a separate page. So this is just, thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
The About page.
Just a setting that needs to be clicked.
Yeah.
But I do love the fact that you have your call to action right here. Sign up here for a free 20-minute. So I thought that was great. And you've got the button right here. Down here, just so you know, you have a link to ConvertKit, and the image apparently was changed on their side. And so it's giving you this weird kind of the link still works, but the image is gone.
Okay.
Eric, any other thoughts on the website?
So right there on the home page, on the About page, it says connect with me for a free 20-minute book marketing assessment, which gives me a little bit of benefit. I love on your website, you have a lot of schedule appointment buttons. Like I can schedule with you at the top. I can schedule with you over by the subscribe. I can schedule with you right under your Aviva market or a publishing logo. Like every page, there's a schedule appointment button.
Problem is people don't hit them.
Right.
So,
and the reason people don't hit them is because nobody wants to schedule an appointment. People want the benefit that the appointment gets them. So at the very top up here, it says, need book marketing help. No, I just need help selling more books. Like I just need to know how to build my brand and sell more books. And so I would recommend that you find a way to figure out what the real pain is. I don't think any authors wake up and go, boy, I wish I had more help marketing my book. Their real pain is probably
make money with your book.
Make money with your book. Right. Get noticed, sell more books, become a bestseller, something like that. Like I would figure out what the real true pain is of your audience, of those authors, and change the schedule appointment to be whatever that pain is, the solution to that pain. maybe that button instead of schedule an appointment is learn how to sell more books, or sell more books this weekend, or make money with your book or something. When they open that, click on the book appointment, Dave. What happens when I go there? When I click on that, I get to a page that I get to choose my appointment. So I would change the header here that explains exactly what you do. Are you struggling with pain? Let's have a 20-minute chat and I can help you overcome that pain, whatever that pain is you describe. But I would change. I think you will get more people clicking on the book appointment, schedule appointment, if it is based on the pain and not just the ingredients in the box. Like, I don't know that anybody wants the puffed flour and the or the sugar and the malt. They want the cereal. Like, they want the snap crackle pop on the front of the box.
Because you can make a form. Here's mine. Because people go like, what does consulting mean? I'm like, oh, I can help you plan. I can help you with your website. I can help you with your equipment, whatever it is. And so you're using the same thing I am. We're both using Acuity Scheduling. So you could add some information here to, like Eric's saying, do you need help, selling more books? Are you tired of looking for a good editor, blah, 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 whatever it is, the pain is,
I never say schedule an appointment because I don't want people to think they can come just, chew the fat with me for 20 minutes for nothing. Like I say, do you need help growing your audience and making money with your podcast? Schedule a podcast strategy session with me, and you and I'll get on the phone and talk, and we'll lay out your strategy for the next year. Like, it's specific what that call is for. It's not a get to know you call. It's not a, let me pick your brain call.
And if I want to get picky, over here you have a 15-minute introductory appointment, and on your website it says 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Yeah,
So
I noticed that too.
It's like, then
one thing I do really, really like about your podcast, which I may steal, is the category section. When I click on podcast categories, like, I can go in here and I can go, okay, I need coaching. So if I click on coaching, it shows me all of the episodes on coaching, and I can go binge listen to all of those. I can listen to episode 74, 290, like all three of them. If I need content creation, I can listen to 107, 170, 164, episode 11, 140. Like, it lets me binge, so I don't have to scroll through and go, okay, now I'm looking for something on
It's a new
entrepreneurship.
edition, let me tell you, because I was like, I've got all these episodes, and people are not going to go through every single 250 plus titles to find what they want.
Yeah,
So,
I thought that was great. I love that
Thank you.
that section of your podcast, of your website.
that means
One
a lot
thing-
because I put a lot of it.
Yeah, it was great. Two things that annoyed me. One is on your homepage, when I click on a tab, it fades into the background for me. Like, the tab becomes white or something. Like, it just, like,
Yeah, well,
makes
that's
it hard to
part
see.
of the, and that is a problem, but that's
Is that part of the theme?
that's part of the theme.
Okay,
Yeah.
so when you change
And
that,
because-
that'll go away. The other thing is, when I click on your contact page, all I get is schedule an appointment.
Okay.
Like, I don't have any way to call you or email you or send you a carrier pigeon or anything. Like, I have to schedule an appointment. Like, that's the only way I can talk to Susan, is schedule an appointment. And again, no benefit to it. So maybe here you put like, hey, would you like to have a chat about making more money with your books? Like, let's talk.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the homepage, I noticed, not on but on Steve's episode, none of the download buttons work.
And I don't know why, because they should be clickable buttons.
Do they work on other episodes?
Only one of them. So the audio one, the PDF, no. And that seemed pretty consistent. Audio, yes. PDF, no.
You know what? Something changed, and that might be as a result of the theme, because it used to be a clickable link.
Yeah, it's I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but like I
No,
say, as
thank
time
you.
goes on, you will find out that this is just not doing what it's supposed to do. And
so as you look for a new theme, the thing I love about this theme is that it's clean, it's easy
I
to
know, that's what I
navigate.
fell in love with.
So as you're looking for new themes, check the ones that Dave recommended there, but look for a theme that is as clean. I love the white space on this particular theme.
Mhm.
I love a lot of photos, and it doesn't get drowning in text. Though you have a lot of text on your site, I don't feel overwhelmed by it.
Okay, so can I talk about that text?
sure.
Sure.
Okay, so really what I work on is that first paragraph. And it, do you want to know about, whatever it is?
Mhm.
And I am playing to keywords because I want to be found.
Yeah.
So I don't know about, search engines and stuff, but I really am working on keywords here.
Mhm.
The bio is usually, what I've read on the episode. And then everything is the same, except I change in this week's podcast episode with the name, and then the bullet points are changed. And I have a couple always of links that go to previous episodes. How do you feel about that? And then, the contact information for the guest. I always have their golden nugget that I turn into a tweetable, and as you see, whatever I can do.
So I love the way you open with a great paragraph that makes me interested in the content. Just like we talked about with your podcast, I would edit that first initial bio paragraph to a couple sentences of why I care. Why do I care what Steve has to say? I'd put that there. I would take this full bio and put that down bottom where you have his contact information. So at the very bottom where it says, here's how to contact Steve to find out more information about his services, I would have that link there. And then right below that, I would put about Steve. And then I would put his whole long bio there.
Oh, really?
Just so it's there. So it gives you some search engine juice. So it's on there for that. But nobody's going to read through the entire bio up top. Like, let's get to the meat. So I would start with your paragraph of here's why you care about this episode. Then I would do a shortened sentence or two of here's why you care about what Steve has to say about this particular subject. And then I love the bullet points and the links, the important links, any links that you mentioned in the show, I'd put right there. And then I would get into I love the tweet, get people to share it that way. I don't know how many people use that, but the more resources you can put on a page, it's probably better for SEO. I don't try and game SEO. I just try and put a lot of valuable content into my post and, it gets found.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm getting about 1,500 plus a month listening. I don't know how good that is, but
That's not the metric you want to quote.
okay.
Because when I say I get 10,000 downloads a month and you go, wow, Dave does a weekly show, he's getting 2,500 downloads an episode. That's not accurate. Because when you say a month, that includes my very first episode from, 15 years ago. So what you want to look at, so it's how many downloads of all your episodes did you get in this month? You want to look at how many downloads per episode. And typically the one that most people gauge it on is how many downloads did you get of this episode after 30 days? But also,
that means, Dave, let me clarify that a little bit. That means once the episode has been out for 30 days, how many downloads has it had?
Right.
So that's sort of the metric we look at, because episode 4 is still going to get downloads today.
Right.
And that skews your total downloads for the month.
Right.
So this month should be bigger than last month because you have more content available. What we want to look at is the episode that you released on January 1st. How many downloads does that have on February 1st?
Right. And it's even more fun once you do this a while to go back and see, like I will go in and I will say, okay, here's the first episode from 2019. And you can go into your stats and say, show me, let's see, this was released on January 1st. So show me from January 1st to January 7th. Like, give me a full week. And I will look at that and I'm like, oh, wow, I had 200 downloads. And then I'll go to January 2020 and do the same thing. Okay, this one was released on the 2nd. Give me the 2nd to the 9th. Okay, great. Oh, wow, this one had 237 downloads. So I'm up 37 downloads. It doesn't really matter what the time amount is. When you're talking stats with sponsors, they want 30 days. But if you pick a window and then compare it to the same window from another time, you can then figure out, am I growing or not? But
okay.
I would say a good, probably close to 60% of my downloads in a month, because I have a big back catalog, are from my back catalog. Because what happens is when somebody finds your show and they're like, that was really good, holy cow. And my favorite button, I use an app called Overcast, and there's a button that says all. And I remember the last podcast I listened to, they had 37 episodes, and I clicked on all and it said, are you sure you want to download 37 episodes? And I'm like, yep. And now that person, if they were at an event and 3 people in the audience went to Overcast and clicked on all, they just got 100 downloads. And that's where I get the ticket at Libsyn, where they're like, there has to be something wrong. I never get this many downloads. What's going on? And it's like, oh, somebody found your show and they liked it. And you can actually go in and see on that day where all of a sudden you just got this huge spike, and it's just like, it's 3 3 3 3 3 3 3 3 3 of every episode, because you can say,
I've
well,
never heard of it. Help me understand what it is. I'm not getting what it is.
Let me
excuse my ignorance.
No, I'll just show you real quick. It's let me log into Libsyn here, and you guys can still see my screen, right?
Yep.
So when I go into stats, and you can see here, you can tell which one of these are Mondays, because I get these big spikes. So if I'm like, but you can also see that even on days when I'm not, if I look here at December 10th, I had 423 downloads. I can look at this and go, what was going on that? And you can see here, if I make this longer, that, that 86 is probably the week's episode. But if I go, this one's from 2019. I had 1 download of that one. Down here from 2018, the ultimate guide to launching your podcast. If I go down to these other pages, this one's from 2005. Your first podcast always stinks. Got 1 download on December 20 or on December 10th. So it's 423 downloads, but those are from all your past episodes. So if I look at that, if I go back to the first page, I believe this was the episode for that week, had 86. But if you count this 21 and 13 and 18 and all the other episodes there, that's probably maybe 50% of the downloads for that day were for the episodes in December. The rest are all from the back catalog. It's a weird concept. Does that kind of clear it up a little bit?
No, you've just complicated it. But
when you look,
you and I can have a different conversation on this. I don't want to.
Yeah. When you look at stats for the month. So if I look at like right now, if I go in here and say, look, this is January 2021, and I can say, show me January 2021 through January 30th. Those are my stats, but that's not just episodes that were released in January 2021. That's all of my past episodes. If you download it this month, it counts. It doesn't matter when it was released.
So, Susan, what you want to look at is episode downloads instead of show downloads.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Dave, if you go to your main stats page, you'll see in the month of December that Dave had some crazy number of downloads for the show itself.
Right.
So let's look at you'll see that number is a lot different than the episode that was released.
I'm trying
let's see.
I'm trying to get the whole year from last year, because month stats are weird.
There we go.
Yeah.
So if you look at his numbers, so if we look at let's go to December. So if you look at the number in December and you see 25,000, 26,000, you'll say, wow, Dave had 26,000 in December. But now let's look at the episode that was released that first week of December. Let's just go to that episode.
Yeah. So that's December.
How many downloads.
Yeah, it's December 2020. So now when I go to episodes and I sort these and we look at the 4 episodes released in December. So we've got my favorite podcast, a 4,000 podcast auditor. So I've got 4 episodes that were 2000, 2022 and 22. So we're looking at 8, maybe 10,000 downloads. But how many downloads did we have? 26,000. So I had 10,000 that were released in December. The other 16,000 came from my back catalog.
Got it.
So if you said how many downloads did your show have in December, it's 26,000. But how many downloads did that episode have in December? It's only 2,000.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I get that. Okay.
So if you're comparing the 26,000, you're not comparing apples to apples.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to do is sort of look at how many downloads your episode gets when it's been released for 30 days. So if you want to track it over the course of a month, like today, you would go back a month ago, look at the episode that was released. How many downloads did that get? And you can track that to see. Then next week you would go a week later, go 4 weeks back, see how many downloads that one got. And you can kind of track how many downloads it gets without having to go through and sort it like Dave did.
Yeah.
You can just go back and look at your episode from 4 weeks ago and see how many downloads it has. Periodically check that number and make sure that number continues to increase. Now on Rob Walsh is VP of podcast relations at Libsyn, and he does a podcast called The Feed. And once a month on The Feed, Rob goes through podcast stats. And it's really statty, and it's a lot of numbers, but and he does this. So he goes back to the previous month and he looks at all of the podcasts in Libsyn that were released in the prior month that have been out for at least 30 days, but less than 60 days. So at the end of January, he will go look at all of the December podcasts and all of the episodes to see how many downloads they received. And the average or the median, the middle number. So if you stack them from largest to smallest and you pick the one that's right in the middle, the 50% median number, it fluctuates anywhere between 125 and 175, depending on the month. It'll kind of bounce around in there. So if you're getting more than 150 downloads an episode after it's been out a month, you're doing pretty well.
You're doing better than 50% of the podcasts. And then I think the average is somewhere around 1,700 to 2,000. That's another one that varies. And
now
so
the average, that mean number gets skewed higher because there are some podcasts that get a bajillion downloads and it just skews the number way up. That's why the mean is 150 or the median is 150, but the mean is 1,700 because like Hardcore History and Joe Rogan skew them like mad, guys that just get crazy downloads.
Yeah. And likewise, and the other thing is because there are so many shows being added on a regular basis, that also then brings that number down. So like yesterday, we had 3,300 podcasts added to Apple Podcast. And those shows, if they get their cousins to listen, might have 13 downloads. So
are those new podcasts or are those episodes?
No, those are new podcasts.
Holy cow.
That's a crazy. Yeah. There are 44 million podcasts. And there are a lot that are removed. Right now we're at 1.8 million, but 3,300. And a lot of those, if we scroll down, you will see, number one, 61% of those are active, meaning they've put out at least one episode in the last 90 days. And this is from podcastindustryinsights.com. And then you'll also see where a majority of them don't make it to episode 10. And if somebody asked me, why is that? I would say, because they're using anchor.fm. They got no skin in the game. It's absolutely free. And they've done 6 episodes and they're not on Jimmy Fallon yet. And they that's it. I'm out. So, and that's why you end up with a lot of inactive shows in Apple Podcasts, because unfortunately, when you use a free media host to host your files, when you quit, your files aren't deleted because what are you going to do? Not pay them anymore? So one of the things I'm not a big fan of Anchor about is there's a litter problem of people that will do 2 episodes and quit. So when you see that 3,000 podcasts added yesterday, a lot of those are not going to make it. A large chunk of them are not going to make them.
Let me ask you about selling episodes. Did you ever put together the top 10s or something like that and sell those?
You could. Can we put a pin on that for a second? Because I since we're bringing up monetization, when I go to your publishing site, it looks like you have. I thought you had something here to buy. Didn't you have a membership site or something? No, nothing here. Okay, so that would be my question. Have you ever thought of, because the number one way to make money with your podcast is not advertising. You can do well with affiliate marketing, but only if you're hyper niche and you got the right product to the right audience. The number one, hands down, is selling your own services and any kind of product or things like that. So if you know your audience and you can make a course on how to, get more book sales, or how, your book A to Z, how to get it started.
I've just put together an author marketing mastery course, a 6-week program.
That's what I saw somewhere. I was like,
that's the latest. And that was working with Iman, Eric. So that was just a beta this last 6 weeks up until the end of December. And I'm planning, to do one in the all singing, all dancing version in March. In fact,
that's what I would do
about partnering on that.
To make money with your podcast. If you have a course like that, like right now, to make money with your podcast, the only thing people can give you money for is your coaching and your expertise, to book that consultation with you. And let's hope that one-on-one conversation could possibly turn into a coaching or a mentorship relationship. But if you have that course and program there, that kind of medium to low step that people can get into, that they can see what you're all about, and then have that lead into your high level program. Now you use your podcast as kind of the top of your funnel, where it lets people get to know who you are and what you're all about and what you teach and what your expertise is. Give them a little freebie. Hey, download my 17 book marketing tips off the website, to gather their email address, that you can then continue to have the conversation with them. And then when you're ready to launch your course, to do a webinar or something like that, to get people in the course, you can invite them to do that, get them in your $500 course. And then after you show them exactly what they need to do through the course and you get them some results, then upsell them to your high level program. But use your podcast to market that. And that's what we talk about at the beginning of your show. Carve out a little time to talk about you and your expertise.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Talk to me about a membership site though. What would I give them on a membership site coming from this? I mean, I was looking at yours, for instance, Dave, and the different levels of membership. Could that be when I do the expertise thing, or it would be different from that?
Well, this brings up a good point. What is the expertise thing?
What is your expertise?
When you bring that up, I got it. Okay. A membership could be, like, for me, people will pay to be transformed. So when you come to me and you go, I know I want to start a podcast, I just don't know which one. Okay, good. Go into my, planning your podcast, and I can help you figure out, the topic that maybe you could go. Okay. And then I help them pick their equipment, and then blah, blah, blah. And by the end, you're an Apple Podcast. So that's what, I've taken them from point A to point B. With Eric, it's like, I don't know, I'm just not getting that much engagement from my audience. And you can sit down with Eric and he's like, well, let's go over this. And, we're doing this and that and that. And at the end, you're like, wow, this is so much better content. And Eric can say, no, don't use that Blue Yeti, use a, Audio Technica or whatever. People pay to be, and transformed is kind of a weird buzz phrase, but you're helping them, with their pain or whatever. So
the thing about a membership is that people will come for the content in the membership, but they'll stay for the community.
Yeah.
So you need to figure out a way to build community around that, whether you have group coaching or open office hours or Q&A sessions every other week or something like that, where people can come together and be part of that community. help them do that. If like I have probably 15 different worksheets and templates that podcasters can use to go from planning their show to conducting their interviews to reviewing their own show and everything in between. And if I were to create a membership site, I could put all of that in the membership site to help them with help. What you need to remember is that each piece in your membership site has to solve one specific problem. So are you having trouble with writer's block? Here's the tool to solve it. Are you having trouble finding stages to speak on to market your book? Here's the tool to solve it. Are you having problems creating Facebook ads? Here's the tool to solve it. And so each piece in your membership solves a particular problem. Like with Dave's membership, are you having problems setting up your equipment? Here's the tutorial that will help you set up your studio.
And so all those things could be little baby courses. They don't have to be these giant,
But the trick is, don't go create it all and then make the membership. What you want to do is create that beta membership with a piece or two that people have. You've had enough conversations with authors to know what they're struggling with, like their two biggest struggles. Create that for the membership site. And then in the membership site, you hold a Q&A every other week or whatever, and find the struggles. Like, oh, if I only knew how to create a Facebook ad, fantastic. I will go create a tutorial on how to do Facebook ads and put that in there. Oh, if I only knew how to get find stages to speak on to market my book, fantastic. I'll go create a little tutorial on how to do that.
Yeah.
Then start populating it with the things that people are asking for. But if you create your beta membership at a low ticket price and get 50 people into it that will help you develop it and tell you exactly what they need, then you can build it out. And then once it's ready, then you can go charge $97 a month for it, because now it serves their exact problems. But you need to find some people to get in it and help you build it and kick the tires on it.
Yeah. And I've seen people use the old FOMO trick. They're like, hey, we're getting ready to launch a membership site, but we're going to go into a beta, but we want, we have a certain kind of person that we need in the beta because we need you to provide feedback. So what we're doing is we're not letting everybody in, but if you want, send me your email, put this in the subject line, and we'll get on the phone and we'll just do a quick 10, 15-minute interview. So there's your 15-minute, marketing call. And we'll see if you're a good fit for the beta. Now it's like, it's not just everybody. It's like, am I good enough to be in the beta group? I've seen people use that kind of for missing out and I now dub thee beta user kind of thing to get people in.
Which is a little bit of what I did with the beta for the course.
Yeah.
Right.
And did Iman's interviews and then
if you go through that, if you go through the ultimate course formula that Amana Guy teaches to create your course, and you use that same thing for membership, and you can say, okay, if you were in a membership for authors, what sort of things would you like to see in that? And they go, oh, you know what? I need this and that. I need to figure out how to get on stages. I need to figure out all of these things. You go, great, great, great. And you go through his 8 golden questions and develop your membership that way. So rather than creating his course, you're just using it to develop the membership.
Develop a membership. Okay. That makes sense. Okay.
And I want to go back one step. You brought up coaching.
Yeah.
Sometimes your audience doesn't know what that is. And I've heard Eric bring clients on his show. I've heard other people. One of my friends, Natalie Ekdahl, did interviews for 2 years. And then she would offer coaching at a discounted rate, but the person would know this is going to be recorded and used as a podcast. So you're still getting paid, but you're also getting paid to create content. And what happened, she said, is her audience went, oh, that's coaching. Like they didn't know what it meant. And it was also valuable because it was somebody that's like, oh, I need this and this, or I had questions about setting up an LLC or whatever. And they answered. So she was still delivering value, but her audience was like, oh, and then they'd see, well, Natalie solved her problem. I bet she can solve mine. And she said, coaching. She goes, I don't know why I didn't do that in the first place. So
one of my biggest, most downloaded episodes is a behind the scenes of a coaching session. It's I did a coaching session with somebody and recorded it for the show, completely upfront with him about it. And that was one of my most downloaded episodes because people want to see what the coaching session is all about.
Yeah. So obviously you have to get, do you have to get written permission that they sign and say it's okay for you to post this?
Yeah, when you start the session, you just ask them, and if they say, you say, "I'm recording this to use on a podcast," you're all good with that, and they say, "Yep," they've given you permission.
Yeah. And then, or you could set up a form like for this special
Yeah.
kind of, hey, this is, a discounted rate because this is going to be recorded and blah, blah, blah. And then just like Eric said at the beginning, like, hey, just remember this is being recorded. And then what I usually do is at the end, I will say, okay, so thanks again for coming on the show. Just for the record though, is there anything that you said that you would want edited out? And most people are like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, did you say anything? They're like, no. Okay. I'm just making sure. And then obviously I edit that out of the episode, but that way I have kind of an audible, consent.
Right. Yeah. So I'm going to use this as the podcast episode. Is there anything in there you don't want me to use?
Mm-hmm.
And they typically say, no, I'm good with all of it. Or they might say, hey, that part where we talked about my finances, can we take that part out?
Yeah.
You go, yep, sure. I'll go clip that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just realized I mentioned my job. And even though I didn't mention my company, is there any way you could pull that out of there? Cause it's a little, fine. Not a problem.
Yeah.
So, but most of the time it's like, what do you mean? Like, did you say you want me to take out?
Recommendation then, obviously there's Libsyn as a host instead of Megaphone. What could I use that, they make it look so nice. I'm into aesthetics, as you can see.
Well, you could be, speaking of beta users, you could be a beta user for Libsyn. We were getting ready to launch Libsyn 5. When you make an episode in Libsyn, you just come in and go, hey, I want to add a new episode. And you have basically...
I used Libsyn before. I went from Libsyn to Megaphone. And
the biggest benefit was... And again, I'm talking as Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting, not Dave Jackson. I'm not defensive at all. I'm curious. In fact, that's actually next month's question of the month is, have you changed media host and what was the biggest benefit? And did you move back? And if so, why?
Well, and that's going to be interesting, because if I go back to Libsyn, especially if you've got a beta version now for, what's it going to do differently than what it did?
Well, what do you want it to do that it's not?
Well, you look at how it comes up on my site now. Mm-hmm. As I said, it's all about aesthetics.
Oh, so in other words, you hated our player, which you're not the first. Yeah. So if I go,
there's that.
Yeah. Well,
you put it better than me but yes.
Well, no, I'm not the first person to say, hey, Dave, I see you have 4 players here. I don't like any of them.
Yeah.
And so there's either you could use Pat Flynn as a third-party player. There's other third-party players that you can use. But that's yet again, another expense. So, but if you're using second line themes, they have their own player. So that's another way of looking at it.
Yeah. So as you look for a new theme for your site, see if you can find a theme that has a player like the one Dave recommended, or some of the others that are out there. There are Dave, what is you interviewed him on the show maybe 6 months ago, and he was talking, he has a theme built specifically for podcasters.
That is probably the guy from Second Line Themes.
Was it him?
I think it's, no. That's a WordPress site. That's not a media host. That's Podpage.
Podpage, yes.
Yeah. So in fact, the podcast review show is using Podpage. So when you go to podcastreviewshow.com.
Now, is Podpage a theme, or does it plug into your WordPress site, or do you host your site on his site?
Here's what Podpage is for. I am not happy with my built-in media host website. It's very basic. I wanted to do more than that. However, I've tried Wix, I've tried Squarespace, and I hate WordPress. So what Podpage does is you put in your RSS feed, you tweak a couple things for about 5 and 10 minutes, and it spits out a website. So it is a replacement for WordPress based on your RSS feed from your media host. So when you publish an episode, Podpage goes out, looks at your feed, and hey, there's a new episode, sucks it into Podpage and makes it pretty.
And what show did you say you host on that? If Susan wants to go check that out,
the Podcast Review Show, the Podcast Rodeo Show, Ask the Podcast Coach. I have a love-hate relationship with WordPress, and so
so this show's over there.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah, so if we go over, so there's the Podcast Rodeo Show. You'll kind of notice where these all look the same. But if I go to Podcast Review Show, And what's kind of interesting about it is when you go to about, and you'll see there's myself and Eric's content, and there's our bios. And then eventually, I haven't done this yet, they just added the ability to add guests. So when you go, and here's that thing where you can put things in by category, which is kind of neat. So if we want to see, well, I want to find out, I want to hear, I do a show about sports. I want to hear somebody review a show about sports. We've got 5 shows that we've done that are somewhat sports related. So it's pretty, I like it. For me, it's powerful enough. I can collect email addresses. I can do redirects. So when you go to podcastreviewshow.com/review me, that points you over to our cart. It's got all my subscribe buttons here. It's a pretty slick thing. I can see my reviews. Oh, what a fantastic asset to podcast owners and producers. And if all
the show is hosted through Libsyn,
right?
But the platform, rather than being on WordPress, is on this particular
Podpage.
platform.
Yeah,
Podpage.
I'm a big fan.
So who hosts this?
Podpage. It's like WordPress. It's its own company, by a guy named Brendan Mulligan, who used to work for Google. And he just said, podcasters seem, again, he dove in deep into podcasting, talked to podcasters, say, what are you guys looking for in a site? And like, oh, we wanted to do this, that, this, and that. And he said, oh, like this? And I was like, well, are there themes to update? Nope. Is it backed up? Yep. Can I do? Yep. How do I see how many visitors I came? Oh, right here. You put your Google Analytics code here. It's pretty slick. So I always say, if you go, but I want to do A/B split testing with this plugin, and no, that's not it. This is like, it's an advanced podcast page that does most of the stuff you probably want it to do. And even that, if I had one complaint, is the guy is always updating it. Like somebody threw out the other day, they're like, does this have forms where I could have my guest fill out a form and have it automatically come to me? And he's like, not yet, but that's a good idea. So he keeps adding to it. So it's pretty.
Okay.
You can see that overview at podpage.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you want to,
there's a run through right there on it.
yeah, you can actually put in your RSS feed and it will generate, you can use it for free. The first 7 days, you have all the pro features. After 7 days, those features go away.
And how much is it a month then?
$15 a month right now. It is getting ready to go up. I do know that. If you want to learn Podpage, speaking of redirects, go to schoolofpodcasting.com/learn Podpage. And that's my free course on how to learn Podpage, which needs updated because Brendan just put out a new update. And I'm like, gotta update the videos, buddy. You're killing me. So
okay, well, this is a lot to take.
It is a lot of
but
info.
I really value what you've shared and given me some great ideas that I now have to implement.
You got a little to-do list there, Susan.
A little to-do list. So if you know anybody.
Absolutely.
I know I'm going to need some technical help with this, but doing this because it's not cost effective for me to.
Well, absolutely. Reach out to either one of us. We can surely direct you to the right people who have expertise in whichever aspect you need some help with.
Yeah.
So.
And what's the guy's name? Ian that does you guys know him?
Steve.
Ian? Nope, Steve, but the guy from, you guys are part of
Iman. 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 Yeah.
Iman. Okay. Because he's like the membership guru guy.
Yeah. He's course creator. Course creation is his specialty through Success Road Academy.
Because I just got an email from the other guy that runs that was giving away his book. Rich
Gurman.
Yeah.
Oh, Rich.
Yeah. Rich Gurman.
So they've got a company, joint venture.
Venture Insider Circle.
Yeah.
Insider Circle, which I think we're both part of that, aren't we, Eric? Yes.
We are.
Yes.
I need to be one of the cool kids. I need to come.
Oh, yes. You have to come join us. We're the cool kids.
Yeah. Any other questions we can help you with?
Oh, probably a lot, but I think my brain is just like in exploding with all the information. So I value your time and what you've taken, what you've done and gone through my podcast. That was
awesome.
Very helpful.
And where can everybody find your show?
Bookmarketingmentors.com.
That is the correct answer, by the way. I've had so many people go, "Oh, wherever, just look for it." I'm like, "No, I'm asking you for your website." And they just
search for it in Apple. You'll find it.
no.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Eric, where can people find you?
Hey, find me over at podcasttalentcoach.com. And I'm always putting together a free training if you want to learn how to grow your audience, podcasttalentcoach.com/growth. And you'll get all the details right there. And Dave, how about you?
You can find me at schoolofpodcasting.com. And of course, if you want, Susan's got the seat all warmed up. If you would like to have your podcast reviewed, simply go over to podcastreviewshow.com/review me, and you'll be right here. And we'll be picking over your site again, finding out what you're doing right and those things that maybe need a little polished, and get you going in the right direction. So thanks for listening. We'll see you again real soon with another episode of the Podcast Review Show.